Chapter 1. The Forgotten Predator. The jungles of Tyrenos Prime echoed with the symphony of wild beasts. Tyrenos was a harsh, untamed world, and its ecosystem had been meticulously engineered by the Kralax Empire centuries ago to breed the galaxy's deadliest bioweapons. Among these creations, the Leviax, a six-legged feline predator with obsidian-black fur and luminescent violet eyes, stood unparalleled. Its razor-sharp claws could cut through reinforced steel, and its stealth rivaled that of the best cloaking devices. For centuries, the Leviax had been bred for war, its reputation cemented as the Kralax Empire's apex weapon of terror. However, with peace treaties now reigning across galactic sectors and the invention of autonomous drones replacing living soldiers, the need for such biological weapons dwindled. As the Empire's focus shifted toward cleaner, more efficient warfare, their prize predators were seen as liabilities too costly to maintain, too dangerous to set free, and too obsolete to be useful. Among those abandoned was Vorin, a Leviax matriarch who had served in countless conflicts. She had been captured from the wild, enhanced genetically, and turned into the perfect killing machine. Her body bore the scars of battle, each a testament to her survival against impossible odds. Yet now, she was just another relic of the past. When the Kralax Empire dismantled its bioweapons program, Vorin and her litter of 3 cubs were deemed unsalvageable. Their fate was cruel. Instead of euthanizing the beasts considered an act of dishonor by the Kralax, they were transported to a remote sector of Tyrenos Prime, far from civilization. A broken-down laboratory, surrounded by malfunctioning force field fences, became their prison. Supplies of nutrient gel and water were deposited initially, but as months passed, shipments became infrequent. Eventually, the Kralax stopped altogether. Inside the crumbling facility, Vorin lay curled around her cubs, her once majestic frame reduced to a shadow of its former glory. Her ribs jutted out beneath her sleek black fur, and her movements had grown sluggish. Hunger gnawed at her insides, but she ignored it, pushing the last remnants of food toward her cubs. Each of them was weak, their playful energy sapped away by starvation. The eldest cub, Calyx, whimpered as he tried to stand. "Mother, will the food return soon?" he asked in the Kralax language, a trait engineered into all Leviax. Vorin lowered her head, her glowing violet eyes dim with exhaustion. "It will," she said, her voice firm despite her own doubts. "You must stay strong. We are Leviax. We endure." Calyx nodded, but the truth was written in his frail posture. The cubs were too young to hunt or fend for themselves, and Vorin was too weakened to break through the perimeter fences. She had tested the electrified barriers multiple times, enduring searing pain as her claws scraped against their energy fields. Freedom was an impossible dream. Far above the jungle canopy, a human salvage freighter, the Stellar Horizon, cruised silently through the Tyrenos sector. Its captain, Eli Morgan, was a seasoned scavenger known for taking on dangerous contracts in uncharted territories. A former soldier turned freelancer, Eli specialized in recovering valuable remnants from abandoned alien facilities. His current assignment was a long-shot retrieve anything of value from an old Kralax bioweapons lab on Tyrenos Prime. As he piloted his aging vessel through the atmosphere, his AI companion, Vera, chimed in. "Captain, I've detected faint energy readings from the facility's perimeter defenses. They're unstable but active. Recommend caution during approach." Eli glanced at the holographic display. "Noted. Anything alive down there?" "Uncertain," Vera replied. "The sensors are picking up biological signatures, but they're faint. Could be residual data from the Kralax experiments. Or it could be something nasty waiting to eat me," Eli muttered. "Well, we're here for salvage, not sightseeing. Prep the drone and keep the engines warm. I don't plan on sticking around longer than necessary." The Stellar Horizon touched down near the edge of the facility, its landing struts sinking slightly into the soft, moss-covered ground. Eli suited up in his exo-armor, a reinforced environmental suit designed for hostile worlds, and armed himself with a plasma rifle. His helmet's HUD displayed a map of the facility, highlighting potential points of interest. As Eli entered the lab's perimeter, the first thing that struck him was the overwhelming silence. The once advanced Kralax structures were now overgrown with creeping vines and moss. Panels flickered weakly, their power cells long past expiration. The air smelled of decay and damp earth. He moved cautiously, scanning the area for threats. Inside one of the larger chambers, he stumbled upon what appeared to be an empty holding pin. Massive claw marks scored the metal walls, and a pungent, musky scent lingered in the air. Eli knelt to examine the marks, frowning. Vera, what made these? The AI analyzed the data. Matches the profile of a Leviaxae Kralax apex predator. According to Imperial records, they were phased out decades ago. If one survived, it would be a miracle. Eli's stomach tightened. He'd heard stories about the Leviax during his time as a soldier. Even in retirement, their reputation as galaxy-wide nightmares persisted. Before he could respond, a low growl echoed through the chamber, sending a chill down his spine. Eli spun around, his rifle raised. From the shadows emerged a massive shape, its glowing violet eyes locking onto him. It was Vorin. The Leviax matriarch was a terrifying sight despite her weakened state. Her once glossy fur was matted, and her body trembled with the effort of standing, but her predatory gaze held an unyielding strength. Behind her, 3 cubs peeked out timidly, their tiny forms barely visible in the dim light. Eli froze, his finger hovering over the trigger. He had faced countless dangers in his career, but something about the Leviax's eyes stopped him. There was no malice in her stare, only desperation. "Vera," he whispered. "Is she protecting those cubs?" "Affirmative," the AI confirmed. Her posture indicates a defensive stance. "Captain, I advise retreat. This creature is far too dangerous to engage." But Eli didn't move. He could see the ribs protruding from her sides, the frailty in her movements. The cubs were even worse off, their tiny bodies trembling with hunger and fear. The sight sparked something deep within him, memories of his own childhood, struggling to survive on a war-torn colony world. He knew what abandonment felt like. Lowering his rifle, Eli reached into his pack and pulled out a ration bar. He tore it open and held it out cautiously. "Hey there," he said softly. "I'm not here to hurt you. Let's see if we can help each other." Vorin's nostrils flared as the scent of food reached her. She hesitated, her instincts warning her against trusting the stranger. But the cries of her cubs swayed her decision. With a low growl, she stepped forward, her eyes never leaving Eli as she took the offering. It was the first step toward an unlikely bond that would change both their fates forever. Chapter 2. The Reluctant Alliance. Eli crouched near the crumbling facility, carefully observing Vorin and her cubs from a safe distance. The massive predator devoured the second ration bar, her movements deliberate but no less feral. Her glowing violet eyes flicked back to him, cautious yet curious, as though she was assessing whether this strange alien was truly a threat. "Vera," Eli whispered, his voice barely audible over the chirps and howls of Tyrenos' wilderness. "Any chance she sees me as anything other than food?" "Unlikely," Vera replied, her tone matter-of-fact. "Leviax are apex predators designed for aggression and survival. However, her behavior suggests she prioritizes protecting her offspring over immediate hostility." Eli scanned the cubs. Their tiny, malnourished frames were heartbreaking. The smallest one, a runt, was barely able to stand, his legs trembling as he attempted to stay close to his mother. The sight stirred something in Eli, a memory of his own struggles on a forgotten colony world, scraping by to survive. "Not this time," Eli muttered. "They're not dying on my watch." Vorin's growl deepened as Eli stood and slowly reached into his pack. He held up another ration bar and tossed it a few feet closer to her. The Leviax sniffed the air, her ears twitching, before cautiously stepping forward. Her cubs followed hesitantly, their eyes darting between the food and the alien offering it. Eli took a step back, his hands raised. "That's it. Take it. No tricks." Vorin devoured the third ration bar in seconds, tearing through the wrapper with her teeth. The cubs moved closer to the discarded scraps, nibbling timidly on what remained. For the first time since he'd entered the facility, Vorin's growl ceased. Her posture relaxed just slightly. "She's not attacking," Eli said, lowering his rifle. "That's progress." "Statistically, her current energy levels make an attack improbable," Vera said. "However, I must remind you that your resources are limited. Continuing to provide food for her, and her offspring will deplete your own supplies within days. Eli sighed. What do you suggest, Vera? Leave them to starve? The AI hesitated, strange pause, almost as though it was processing his rhetorical question. Logically, no. But relocating a Leviax family aboard the Stellar Horizon introduces significant risk. Their instincts are unpredictable and dash. I'm not leaving them here, Eli interrupted. We'll figure it out. Convincing Vorin to trust him enough to leave the facility was no easy task. Over the next few hours, Eli worked cautiously, using ration bars and nutrient paste to build a fragile bond. Each time he approached, he moved slowly, avoiding sudden gestures that might provoke her. The cubs grew braver, venturing closer to him with each interaction. Finally, as the sun dipped below the jungle canopy, casting long shadows across the facility, Eli decided to make his move. He activated his ship's communicator. Vera, prep the cargo hold. Reinforce the containment fields and set up a feeding station. Understood, Captain. However, I must reiterate dash. Just do it, Eli snapped. He turned back to Vorin, who was watching him intently. All right, big girl. Time to get out of here. He backed away toward the Stellar Horizon, leaving a trail of ration bars along the path. Vorin hesitated, her glowing eyes narrowing as she studied the strange alien. After a tense moment, she stepped forward, her cubs following close behind. When they reached the ship, Vorin froze. The sight of the massive, unfamiliar structure set her on edge. She sniffed the air, her ears flattening against her skull. Her growl returned, low and guttural, as her claws dug into the ground. It's okay, Eli said softly, raising his hands. It's safe. I promise. She didn't understand his words, but something in his tone seemed to soothe her. Slowly, cautiously, she stepped onto the ramp, her cubs clinging to her side. Eli activated the containment field as soon as they entered, creating a secure barrier between the cargo hold and the rest of the ship. Inside the Stellar Horizon, Vorin and her cubs huddled together in the corner of the cargo hold. Eli placed a bowl of nutrient paste within the containment field, then retreated to a safe distance. He watched as Vorin sniffed the paste cautiously before lapping it up. Her cubs followed suit, their tiny bodies trembling with hunger as they devoured the food. You're safe now, Eli murmured. We'll figure out the rest later. As the ship ascended into orbit, Eli couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much larger. Vorin wasn't just a predator, she was a survivor, like him. And together, they might just have a chance. Chapter 3. The Escape from Tyrenos. The Stellar Horizon's engines roared to life as the ship ascended through the dense atmosphere of Tyrenos Prime. Eli kept one eye on the navigational controls and the other on the containment field monitor. Inside the cargo hold, Vorin lay protectively over her cubs, her glowing eyes fixed on the walls as if expecting them to close in. They don't look too comfortable, Eli muttered to himself. Captain, Vera's voice broke through his thoughts. Incoming transmission detected. It appears to be a Kralax patrol vessel. Their trajectory suggests they've detected our departure. Eli cursed under his breath. Of course they did. What are they saying? Translating now. The AI paused briefly. Message reads, Unidentified vessel. You are in restricted Kralax airspace. Power down your engines and prepare for inspection. Eli frowned. Inspection? Yeah, that's not happening. Plot an evasive course. In the cargo hold, Vorin growled as the ship jolted violently during Eli's first evasive maneuver. The sound startled the cubs, who huddled closer to her. Vorin's ears flattened, her gaze darting toward the containment field. She didn't trust the strange environment, but she could sense that whatever threat was outside was far worse. Easy, big girl, Eli said through the intercom. I've got this. The Kralax patrol ship appeared on the Stellar Horizon's radar, closing the distance with alarming speed. Eli gripped the controls tightly. Vera, options? Their vessel is equipped with advanced plasma weaponry. Our defenses are insufficient to withstand a direct attack. I suggest deploying decoys and heading for the asteroid field to the north. Eli nodded. Asteroid field it is. Let's hope they're as bad at flying as they are at diplomacy. The Stellar Horizon dove into the asteroid field, weaving through massive chunks of rock and debris. Plasma fire from the Kralax ship streaked past, narrowly missing the freighter's engines. Inside the cargo hold, Voron's growls grew louder as the cubs whimpered. "Captain," Vera warned, "our shields are at 60%. Sustained fire will compromise the hull." Eli gritted his teeth. "Noted. Divert auxiliary power to the engines. If we can outmaneuver them, we might have a chance." The ship twisted and turned, narrowly avoiding collisions with tumbling asteroids. The Kralax patrol wasn't giving up easily, their weapons blazing as they tried to box Eli in. He activated the decoy drones, releasing a swarm of small, glowing targets that confused the enemy ship's targeting systems. For a moment, it worked. The Kralax focused their fire on the drones, giving Eli a chance to push deeper into the asteroid field. But the reprieve was short-lived. "They're gaining," Vera reported. "Suggest immediate countermeasures." "Countermeasures?" Eli scoffed. "We're a salvage ship, Vera, not a warship. The only countermeasure we have is running faster." In the cargo hold, Voron's instincts took over. She rose to her full height, her body shielding her cubs as the ship shook violently. Her growl deepened, the sound reverberating through the steel walls. Despite her weakened state, she was ready to fight, even if she didn't understand the threat. Eli glanced at the containment field monitor and saw her pacing. "Hang in there, big girl," he said, his voice strained. "Just a little longer." Finally, an idea struck him. "Vera, can we reroute power from the weapon system to the engines?" "Doing so would leave us defenseless," the AI replied. "We're not defending ourselves now," Eli shot back. "Do it." The stellar horizon surged forward, its thrusters burning brighter as it sped through the asteroid field. The Kralax ship struggled to keep up, its larger size making it harder to navigate the dense debris. Eli spotted a particularly unstable asteroid cluster up ahead and aimed directly for it. "Hold on," he muttered. As the stellar horizon dove into the cluster, the Kralax ship hesitated. The unstable asteroids began colliding, creating a chain reaction of explosions. One of the blasts caught the patrol ship, sending it spiraling out of control. Eli seized the opportunity to escape, pushing the stellar horizon's engines to their limit. After several tense minutes, the radar showed the Kralax ship falling behind. Vera's voice broke the silence. "Pursuit terminated. We are clear of the Kralax vessel." Eli exhaled in relief, leaning back in his seat. "Good. Plot a course for the nearest uncharted sector. I don't want to be anywhere near Kralax space." "Understood." Back in the cargo hold, Voron finally relaxed as the ship stabilized. She lay down, her cubs curling up against her. Eli entered cautiously, holding another bowl of nutrient paste. He placed it just inside the containment field and knelt a few feet away. "You're safe now," he said softly. "No one's going to hurt you." Voron's glowing eyes studied him intently. Slowly, she stepped forward and began eating. For the first time, her growls ceased entirely. The cubs followed her lead, their tiny forms pressing against her side as they ate. Eli watched in silence, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Guess we're stuck together now, huh?" Voron's gaze flicked up to meet his, and for a moment, Eli thought he saw something that wasn't pure instinct, something that resembled trust. But trust wasn't enough. They had escaped Tyrenos, but the galaxy was vast and unforgiving. Eli knew their fight for survival was far from over. Chapter 4. A Bond Forged in Fire. The stellar horizon drifted through the emptiness of deep space, far from Kralax-controlled sectors. Eli leaned back in the captain's chair, exhaustion etched into his face. The adrenaline of escaping the Kralax patrol had worn off, leaving him with the sobering realization of what he'd taken on. A starving predator and her cubs, hunted by one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. "Vera," he said, breaking the silence, "status report?" "Structural integrity is stable but compromised in several areas," the AI replied. "Shields are at 35%, and our remaining rations will last approximately 4 days assuming you continue feeding the Leviax family." Eli sighed. "We'll figure out the food situation. What about the Kralax? Any signs of pursuit?" "Negative," Vera replied. "However, Kralax patrols are known for their persistence. It is likely they will scan nearby systems for anomalous activity." Eli rubbed his temples. "Noted. Let's find somewhere to lay low and make repairs." In the cargo hold, Voron was beginning to recover. The nutrient paste had revitalized her enough to stand more confidently, though her movements were still slow and cautious. Her cubs, once trembling with hunger, now played tentatively around her feet. Eli approached the containment field cautiously, a fresh bowl of nutrient paste in hand. He knelt just outside the barrier and set the bowl down. "Hey, big girl," he said softly. "Brought you something." Voron's glowing violet eyes locked onto him, but there was no growl this time. Slowly, she stepped forward, her massive frame dwarfing Eli. She sniffed the paste, then glanced up at him as if waiting for permission. "It's yours," Eli said, keeping his voice calm. "Go ahead." She began eating, her movements deliberate but less frantic than before. The cubs followed, their tiny bodies pressing against her for warmth and security. As Eli watched, a thought struck him. "Vera," he said quietly, "what do we know about Leviac's intelligence?" "Leviacs are highly intelligent creatures," Vera replied. "Their problem-solving abilities rival those of primates, and they are capable of forming strong emotional bonds with their offspring and, in rare cases, other species. So, there's a chance she understands I'm trying to help?" "Possible," Vera replied. "But trust between species is rarely instantaneous. It will require time and consistency." Eli nodded. "Well, I'm not going anywhere." A desperate gamble. The stellar horizon's supplies dwindled faster than Eli expected. By the third day, he was down to half a day's worth of rations. Voron and her cubs were growing stronger, but their needs outpaced what the ship could provide. "We can't keep this up," Eli muttered, staring at the inventory report on the holographic display. "Vera, are there any uninhabited planets nearby with viable ecosystems?" Scanning. The AI's voice was calm, but the pause that followed felt like an eternity. "One candidate located. Planet Gorlith, 3, approximately 6 hours away at current speed. It is an uncharted world with a breathable atmosphere and abundant flora and fauna. However, scans indicate the presence of predatory life forms." Eli smirked. "Sounds like home for them. Plot a course." The approach to Gorlith 3 was uneventful, though Eli couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The Kralax hadn't made another appearance, but their patrols were relentless. Every scan, every flicker on the radar, sent his heart racing. When they reached the planet, Eli guided the stellar horizon into a low orbit, searching for a suitable landing site. Gorlith 3 was a wild, untamed world, its surface covered in dense forests and jagged mountains. Rivers snaked through the landscape, glinting in the sunlight like silver threads. "Captain," Vera said, "I've identified a clearing near a river that should accommodate the ship. It will also provide a suitable environment for the Leviacs." "Perfect," Eli replied, setting the ship down gently in the clearing. The engines powered down with a low hum, leaving the sounds of the alien wilderness to fill the silence. In the cargo hold, Voron was alert. She sensed the change in atmosphere and prowled near the containment field, her cubs following her movements. When Eli opened the bay doors, fresh air flooded the space, and Voron's ears perked up. She sniffed the air, her tail flicking in anticipation. "All right, big girl," Eli said, lowering the containment field. "This is your stop." Voron stepped forward cautiously, her claws clicking against the metal floor as she approached the open doors. The cubs hesitated, but a low purr from their mother encouraged them to follow. Together, they stepped onto the soft grass of Gorlith 3, their movements fluid and instinctive. Eli watched from the ramp, a strange mix of relief and sadness washing over him. "You're free now," he said softly. "No fences, no Kralax, no starving in a cage. Just be safe, all right?" Voron turned back to him, her glowing violet eyes meeting his. For a moment, she stood still, as if understanding his words. Then, to Eli's surprise, she let out a low, rumbling sound that wasn't a growl, it was something softer, almost like gratitude. The cubs chirped excitedly as they explored their new surroundings, their tiny forms darting through the grass. Voron watched them for a moment before turning back to Eli one last time. Then, with a powerful leap, she disappeared into the trees, her cubs following close behind. Epilogue: A New Purpose. Eli stood on the ramp long after Voron and her cubs had vanished from sight. He felt a strange emptiness, as though he'd lost something he didn't even know he needed. But there was also a sense of accomplishment, a feeling that, for once, he'd done something that truly mattered. "Captain," Vera's voice broke the silence. "Our systems are ready for departure. Shall I plot a course?" Eli nodded. "Yeah, let's get out of here." As the stellar horizon lifted off, Eli glanced back at the planet below. Somewhere in those wild forests, Vorin and her cubs were starting a new life. It wasn't much, but it was a chance, and sometimes that was all anyone needed. As the stars enveloped the ship, Eli couldn't help but smile. He'd come to Tyrenos Prime for salvage, but he was leaving with something far more valuable: a renewed sense of purpose and the knowledge that even in the darkest corners of the galaxy, hope could still shine through.